First this morning, District Attorney Carrie Brandenburg and her office are off the case of two APD officers charged with murder. A judge says there could be an appearance of conflict.
Brandenburg charged APD officer Dominic Perez and now retired officer Keith Sandy with murdering James Boyd. But a month before that, reports surfaced of APD's investigation into Brandenburg. Police accused her of attempting to bribe victims of burglaries allegedly committed by her son. Brandenburg denied the accusations, and yesterday in court, the court stated it does not believe an actual conflict exists, but an appearance of conflict exists, saying media coverage and the DA's own comments were enough to create a public perception of conflict. Now, this all comes after the officer's attorneys raised the issue in court.
There was a strong appearance that she was prosecuting this for other reasons other than a crime has been committed.
Now, the decision does not affect the murder charges yet. So what happens now, and what does Brandenburg have to say about all of this? We'll have those details coming up in our next half hour.
Another APD officer facing criminal charges also wants the DA removed from his case. Nearly a year ago, Officer Pablo Padilla kneed a UNM student in the groin during a traffic stop. That student ended up losing a testicle. Officer Padilla was helping the DA's office prosecute that DWI suspect, Jeremy Martin. Now it's the other way around, with the suspect now the DA's key witness against the officer. Padilla's lawyer says the DA cannot have it both ways.
They met with Officer Padilla, they obtained information from Officer Padilla, and to now have that same office prosecuting Officer Padilla for that incident gives rise to a conflict.
The DA's office has not commented on that issue.
We turn now to this. New Mexico State Police Department is facing a huge shortage. Right now, it's down 100 officers. That's 20% of the force. The state police chief says they are struggling to find people who want to become an officer. Only 100 people have applied for its newest recruiting class. There's usually 1,000 applicants. The chief says pay is one big reason people don't apply.
With everything going on right now across the country, it's a difficult sell to bring people to this profession. So I'm looking for, as a chief, people that want to rise to that challenge, that want to go to work every day and interact with people and have a fulfilling career.
If you're interested in becoming a state police officer, the deadline to apply for the latest recruiting class is on Monday. A solution to shore up that shortage may be coming sooner than many expected. As part of the new budget, officers will be getting a raise. Yesterday, the budget was approved by the governor. The $6.2 billion spending plan includes a $2 an hour raise that brings new state police officers' salaries in line with APD at around $41 grand a year. The budget also includes a pay increase for new teachers, $37 million in education initiatives, and more money for job training programs and more funding for CYFD.
Developing this morning, 3 suspects accused of shooting and robbing a man over drug money are under arrest. In January, police say Devante Enriquez, Raul Tina, and Isaiah Martinez confronted Adrian Gallegos outside of his home. They're accused of robbing Gallegos because he owed them drug money. When Gallegos tried to run, police say he was shot in the back. Gallegos did manage to survive, and the suspects are now facing charges, including robbery and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. Times 5:05, we're staying on top of the return of hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of valuable items to their owners in Santa Fe. Police arrested Carlos Segura last week. He's accused of breaking into homes, stealing jewelry, baseball cards, and electronics. If you believe something belongs to you among what's in this video, go to our website, KRQE.com, search Santa Fe stolen property. You'll find contact information and what you will need to claim your property.
The homeless who are living at the latest Tent City location may be forced to pull up their stakes and move once again. Homeless campers set up Tent City 5 in an arroyo just off of Central and Tramway in the Four Hills area. That was earlier this week. The land is owned by a company out of Iowa and is not zoned for camping. The Albuquerque Journal reports the campers do not have permission from the property owners to camp there. The land is outside the city limits, and the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office is keeping a very close eye on the area. So far, eviction notices have not been handed out.
For a state that's faced years of drought, New Mexico could use some new sources of drinking water. And some experts say a source like that's been here the whole time. News 13's Catherine Mazzone has more on a unique competition happening here in our state to find it. Catherine?
That's right, Adam. Now, for years, many believe the solution is the brackish water that sits underneath much of the Earth's surface, including New Mexico. Now, the federal government is holding a competition to see if someone can come up with an answer. and turn this underground salt water into drinking water.
The goal is to provide a way for people to have safe drinking water and irrigation water that is suitable for irrigating crops that will have high crop yields.
CA teams from 29 different countries have come up with a way to make the salty water drinkable. Now 5 finalists are in Alamogordo to see whose process is the most cost-effective, energy efficient, and environmentally sustainable. Their task is to turn 4,000 gallons of brackish water into agricultural water and potable water.
Desalination is real important for this region. There's very little fresh water, and what little fresh water is available is usually stressed. There's more demand than there is supply.
Now, the winner of the competition is set to walk home with $200,000. That's for continued research and to try to get that system out on the market. Back to you, Adam.
Catherine, thanks. You know, the competition will be open to the public on Saturday at the Bureau of Reclamation in Alamogordo. There is new dash cam video this morning of a deadly shooting involving a South Carolina police officer. State investigators released the video of the traffic stop between former officer Michael Slager and Walter Scott. The video shows Slager getting out of his police car. Then he goes back and shuts the door. Later, you see Scott running and Slager chasing after him. None of the dash cam shows the deadly confrontation, which happened next. A witness, though, did capture video of Slager shooting Scott in the back as he ran off. Scott died on scene, and Slager is now behind bars facing charges, including murder.
A security guard is dead after being shot outside a U.S. Census Bureau in Maryland. The shooting happened last night after an armed man kidnapped a woman. The suspect shot the guard as he approached the suspect's car. The suspect then led police on a chase that ended in Washington, D.C. That's where D.C. police cornered the suspect, who opened fire again, wounding an officer. Police shot back and wounded the suspect. Both the suspect and the officer were taken to the hospital. Their names have not been released at this time.
People are assessing the damage left behind after that. A big tornado ripped through northern Illinois. The twister touched down yesterday evening, killing 1 person and injuring 7 others. Rochelle and Fairdale, 80 miles west of Chicago, were the 2 towns hardest hit by that storm.
We pulled in here and ran inside. Got a couple of pictures of the tornado right across the street from us here, and the owner said in the basement, and we went down in the basement.
And that tornado was just part of a line of severe storms that moved across the Midwest. Other tornadoes were reported in Iowa and Missouri.
A lot of people are talking about that twister right there. Massive tornado.
Big destruction, too, unfortunately. Interview questions that are off this developing right now. A high-profile case that gained national attention is making headlines again with a judge's controversial decision.
The shooting of homeless camper James Boyd sparked more controversy when DA Carrie Brandenburg charged officers Dominic Perez and Keith Sandy with murder. As News 13's Catherine Ozone explains, a rare decision now has her off the case completely. Good morning, Catherine.
Well, that's right. The judge says the move to take Bernalillo County DA Carrie Brandenburg off the case is about the appearance that a conflict of interest exists. She says that's enough to bring in a different prosecutor. Judge Elisa Hadfield disqualified Brandenburg's office from prosecuting the case, saying it is, quote, necessary to ensure the appearance of fairness and public trust in the justice system, end quote. Attorneys for Sandy and Perez say it's the right call. They've argued in court there's a conflict of interest because APD accused her of trying to bribe burglary victims to protect her son. But Brandenburg denies those allegations and says she's not hiding from anything. Regardless, Judge Hadfield says media's connection of the investigations and the DA's own comments create an appearance of a conflict. Brandenburg can appeal the decision or appoint a special prosecutor.
If people believe that that someone is being prosecuted because of other interests, other motivations, that doesn't work, and that puts a stain on the justice system. And I think the court saw this.
Now, that prosecutor will determine whether they should move forward with the charges. She says she'll think it over and wait to comment until next week. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Catherine. Now, Perez's attorney says he will wait a month for Brandenburg to either appoint a special prosecutor or file an appeal. If not, he says he will file to dismiss the murder charges altogether.
5:33 now. We're hearing from a man accused of killing a New Mexico state police officer and then fleeing to Cuba in 1971. Charlie Hill spoke with CNN from Cuba last night. He and 2 others are accused of killing State Police Officer Robert Rosenblum while smuggling weapons through our state. Governor Susana Martinez wants Hill back in our country to face those charges. In the interview, though, Hill says he misses the U.S., his daughter and grandchildren, and wants to prove that he's not a terrorist. New Mexico State Police Chief Pete Caceres is skeptical.
I miss my family. I would like to go back to where my grandparents were born.
I'm sure that Officer Rosenblum's family would gladly like to experience the same things he's talking about coming back to.
The governor has been pushing Secretary of State John Kerry to have Hill return. The feds say they're working on it, but so far, Cuba has resisted turning over fugitives. The man convicted of killing his lover's husband and then dumping that body at the Sunport will spend the rest of his life in prison. In 2011, Marzette Ferris and Laura Stelmasic drove from Prescott, Arizona to Albuquerque with the body of her husband Craig in the back. They then left the van at the Sunport, and that body was found days later. Craig had been stabbed multiple times. Ferris and Stelmasic were later arrested in North Carolina. Stelmasic was convicted in that murder last month. Her sentencing is set for May.
We turn now to this. It's down to 3. Today is day 2 of the APS Superintendent Forums, with only 3 candidates left in the pool. Last night, they were asked about how they would run the district. All 3 include Almudena Abeta from Santa Fe, Michael Cadorna from Houston, and Luis Valentino from San Francisco. Last night was the first of 4 community forums to ask the candidates questions. Each candidate was asked the same question, including what they thought about the controversial park test, which sparked protests last month.
One of them in New Mexico happens to be park. Are there problems with park? Sure there are. There are problems with smarter balanced. But we need to really be transparent about every assessment that we use.
That program allows kids to manipulate things, especially kids that have learning disabilities. And there is some intensive PE for teachers, but I think it pushes the rigor.
We have to be able to advocate for our teachers with the State Department and say, you know what, this may not be right, and how can we make this better? How can we use maybe a benchmark that's going to measure what kids have actually learned? It's so important that we don't forget that we're dealing with people here. We're dealing with students, they're human beings.
Now, to see the resumes of the 3 candidates and learn about today's community forums, go to our website, krqe.com. We have all the information for you listed there. APS says it will pick a superintendent come Saturday. Keeping with education, some new numbers released this week suggest that the state-funded pre-K program in New Mexico is a success. The new statistics show 40% of 4-year-olds in New Mexico are enrolled in the program, which is available at many public schools throughout the state. In years past, only low-income students were eligible, but in recent years, the state has opened them up to all students in an effort to boost overall student achievement. Now, the budget just approved by lawmakers provides another $25 million to expand the pre-K program to even more schools.
Developing right now a plan to upgrade UNM Hospital. The university says the existing facility is old and overcrowded. UNM Hospital turns away hundreds every year and keeps patients in the ER because of the lack of beds. Years ago, they proposed an expansion project which included a 96-bed facility, a new one. But that project stopped at the State Board of Finance. Officials say they're now working to present a new plan by next month.
It's now 5:37. Horrifying moments caught on camera as a school bus rolls over. Kids were still inside screaming. Listen. The video shows a bus fishtailing on a highway in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The bus ends up skidding off the road before crashing through that guardrail you just saw, then into a light pole. It's now rolling over before finally coming to a stop. One student remains in the hospital with a broken leg this morning. Others were treated for bumps and bruises and released. Police are still investigating, but the district says GPS shows the bus was going below the speed limit. They say, however, it was still enough to cause it to hydroplane in the heavy rain. A school resource officer in Kentucky is out of a job after surveillance video caught him putting a 13-year-old student in a chokehold until the teen passed out. According to court records, the now former officer, Jonathan Hardin, put the teen in handcuffs and charged him with resisting arrest after the teen was completely knocked out. It wasn't the first time the officer had been in trouble. Records showed that just days earlier, Hardin had hit another teen in the face for not following his commands. He had been previously fired from the police department before working with the schools.
Imagine showing up to your vacation home and finding it missing. A family in Washington State's entire cabin is just gone. They told authorities that when they got there, they noticed that the lock to their gate had been cut, and that's not all. Their entire vacation home ripped off its foundation, and only the cinder blocks that held it up were left behind. Police didn't have a lot of evidence really to go on other than tire tracks, but the family's still hoping that someday their cabin is going to be found. And how does you take off with something like that, you know? It'd be so conspicuous.
You know, and it happened here, but it was a mobile home out in the West Mesa, but an entire cabin.
Very noticeable for sure.
That is crazy.
We'll see how that develops. A hero